Hello, my name is Monster Half-Life, and today we're going to be talking about Orcus, the demon prince of undeath, also known as the Blood Lord. He takes pleasure in the suffering of any living creature, and he wants to transform the multiverse into an undead paradise. Now, he is very tough on his own at a CR 26, but unlike most monsters, his lair and his equipment vastly change what he can do, and it also vastly changes the strategies that he'll impose, as the Wand of Orcus gives him so much more power than he has at his base level. Now, in the video, we're going to be going over his regular stats, what the wand gives him if he has it, and then we'll go over his strategies. First on the material plane, assuming that he's not near his base and that he doesn't have the wand, we'll be going over his strategies in his base, as his lair actions are extremely powerful for what they can do. And lastly, we're going to be going over what the wand gives him and what strategy he does in response to that. And truthfully, the Wand of Orcus got a big buff in 2024. So I'll be going over the changes that the buff will give him and why that makes his fight almost impossible if you play him very smart. Now, without further ado, I'd like to present how to run Orcus, the Demon Prince of Undeath. Orcus's stat block, even without his lair actions or the wand, is still a pretty formidable stat block to be going up against. With an AC of 17, HP of 405, and a fly speed of 40 feet and a ground speed also of 40 feet, he's pretty formidable right out the gate. His strongest base stat is his strength at a +8, though his strongest saving throw is his constitution with a +15. His intelligence is going to be his weakest saving throw at a +5. His proficient in dexterity, constitution, and wisdom saving throws, and his skills are a +12 in arcana and a +12 in perception. As for his damage resistances, he has resistance to cold, fire, and lightning damage, so 3 of the pretty big elemental damages don't do quite as much damage to him. As for his immunities, obviously he'd be immune to necrotic and poison damage, as both of those also don't really affect undead. He's also immune to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage that's non-magical, but he's CR 26. If you're fighting a CR 26 monster with a non-magic weapon, your DM has failed you. You should have magic weapons to be fighting against the Demon Prince of Undeath. As for his condition immunities, he's immune to being charmed, exhausted, frightened, or poisoned. Lastly, he has true sight of up to 120 feet and a passive perception of 22. As for his traits, he has 3 legendary resistances a day, he has magic resistance all the time, so he's able to have advantage against saving throws against spells and other magical effects. And he has the Master of Undeath trait, where he can cast either Animate Dead at will or Create Undead 3 times a day. He gets to choose the level at which the spells are cast, and those creatures created by him remain under his control indefinitely. Additionally, he can cast Create Undead even when it isn't nighttime. Now, you're not going to be doing this during battle because it costs a minute to cast Animate Dead, and it takes also a minute to cast Create Undead. But this is a good thing to be pumping out minions for. But let's see his actions. For his multi-attack, he can make either 3 tail or necrotic bolt attacks. With his tail attack, it's a +16 to hit, and with a 10-foot reach, it does 3d8 + 8 force damage, plus 2d8 poison damage on a hit. As for the necrotic bolt, it has a range of 120 feet and has a +15 to hit. It does 5d8 + 7 necrotic damage, as it uses his charisma instead of his strength to do that attack. As for his spellcasting, it also uses his charisma, though truthfully, there's no DC to any of these spells, so you don't really have to worry about it too much. At will, he can cast Detect Magic. 3 times a day, he can cast Dispel Magic. And once a day, he can cast Time Stop. As for his legendary actions, he can take up to 3 legendary actions a round, and he has 2 options. He has the Attack legendary action, which lets him make 1 Tail or Necrotic Bolt attack, and he has Creeping Death, which costs 2 legendary actions, where he can point to the ground that he can see within 100 feet of him, and a cylinder of swirling necrotic energy 60 feet tall with a 10-foot radius rises from that point and lasts until the end of Orcus's next turn. Creatures in that area have vulnerability to necrotic damage. Now, that's just his base stat block, though if you look at his stat block in the book, it also says that he wields the Wand of Orcus. Though, truthfully, I figured I'd give you the without wand stat block first, because if he gets the wand, especially with the buffs in-game, with the 2024 version, you're screwed. Your party is kind of screwed. But we'll go over what he can do. And we'll go over the changes that the 2024 version makes to the stat block. If he has the Wand of Orcus, he also gets the option to use the Wand of Orcus melee attack in his multi-attack. He can make up to 3 of them. With this attack, he gets a plus 19 to hit, a reach of 10 feet, and it does 3d8 plus 11 bludgeoning damage, plus 2d12 necrotic damage. He has the Wand spellcasting, which lets him cast up to a certain amount of spells. The DC is lower than his regular spellcasting at an 18 instead of a 23, and he has 7 charges to fuel these spells, and he regains 1d4 plus 3 charges daily at dawn. At will, which means no charges, he can cast Animate Dead as an action, Blight, or Speak with Dead. For 1 charge each, or up to 7 times in a battle, he can cast either Circle of Death or Finger of Death. And for 2 charges, or up to 3 times a battle, he can cast Power Word Kill. That's pretty insane. Lastly, he has the Conjure Undead, which he can do once a day. Now, in the old 2014 version, and the version that it says on the stat block, he can conjure undead creatures whose combined average hit points do not exceed 500. These creatures magically rise up from the ground or otherwise form in unoccupied spaces within 300 feet of Orcus and obey his commands until they are destroyed or they are dismissed as an action. Now, this feature was changed in the 2024 version of the Wand of Orcus. So what does it do now? Well, it's called Call Undead. And while he's holding the wand, he can take a magic action to conjure 15 skeletons or 15 zombies within 300 feet. Well, no, that's actually a lie. Orcus, specifically, can summon any type of undead, not just skeletons or zombies. So he can summon 2 of any type of undead. So, for example, he could summon, let's say, 15 liches and 15 vampires. He can do this once a day. And they don't perish at dawn on the following day. They remain until Orcus dismisses them. So that already gives him a leg up against anyone else that he's using with this wand. But if he's in his lair, he gets even more things to kill your opponents with. On initiative count 20, he can use one of the 3 legendary actions. And he can't take the same lair action 2 times in a row. He can use Deadly Utterance, which lets him use Power Word Kill on anyone that he knows is in the lair. He doesn't have to see them. He can just use Power Word Kill on someone that he knows is in his lair. He has Grasp of Death, which causes skeletal arms to rise from an area in a 20-foot square that he can see. They last until the next initiative count 20, and each creature in the area where the arms appear must succeed on a DC 23 strength saving throw, or they're restrained until the arms disappear or Orcus releases them. Lastly, there's Undead Servants, which lets Orcus cause up to 6 corpses within the lair rise as skeletons, zombies, or ghouls, all of which appear in the monster manual. These undead obey his telepathic commands, which can reach anywhere in the lair. That's a lot of things that he can do. He has a very big stat block, but we'll be going over what he can do for strategies without the wand and outside of his lair. Orcus on the surface, truthfully, isn't really going to care about dying. He knows he'll respawn in his lair, and if he doesn't have the wand, he's not worried about losing it. So you can play him a lot more recklessly without the wand and outside of his lair. But how will you play him? Well, truthfully, he has a +2 to his initiative, so he's most likely not going to go first, which is a good thing. Why? Well, one of his legendary actions, Creeping Death, gives vulnerability to necrotic damage. So you're going to probably use his tail or necrotic bolt just anytime during that round, but you're going to save 2 actions to use Creeping Death right before his turn, because you're going to be using necrotic bolt on whoever you put in that little 10-foot radius. They haven't had time to move yet, and so you're going to be doing vulnerable necrotic damage to them. On average, the necrotic bolt does 29 points of damage, so with vulnerability, it does an average of 58 points of damage. And you can do 3 of those on your turn. So that's what you're going to want to do. Now, are you going to use your tail? Sometimes, but truthfully, he's probably going to risk getting that opportunity attack against melee people, because 58 points of damage per hit on anyone who's in his little Creeping Death thing is amazing. And it lasts until the end of your turn, so might as well take advantage of it. Besides, with his Master of Undeath ability, he'll probably have a little army with him. He can use up to 6 mummies, and then he can have a ton of different zombies and skeletons. So you're probably going to be wading through bodies just to get to him anyways. Now, he does have some spell casting, though truthfully, he's not going to use it that much. Detect magic is not really useful in battle, so he's not going to use that. Dispel magic he'll probably use on something buffing one of the players, such as a haste, or he's going to use dispel magic to get rid of a slow on himself, something like that. And lastly, without the wand and without his lair actions, time stop is going to be used when he wants to move without getting hit with an opportunity attack. So most likely when he's lower on HP, when he knows he can still do more damage, but he doesn't want to deal with getting hit. So he'll use the time stop, move to wherever, and then use his necrotic bolt or his tail, depending on if you want to use like flanking rules with his minions or not. As for his lair, it doesn't change up his strategy too much, but it does make him a bit more careful, as he knows he can die at any point in his lair, and he knows he can die for real, unlike on the surface where he just spawns in his lair. So he's going to be a bit more careful in his lair. On the surface, outside of his lair, he's not going to flee. He will let you get him to 0 HP. In his lair, he'll get down to roughly a fourth, so just a little over 100 HP is when he's going to flee. And he'll probably flee with time stop. He'll save his time stop for fleeing. But getting to what he can do in the lair, he's going to probably be switching between 2 of the 3 lair actions. He's going to be using his Deadly Utterance to use Power Word Kill on either opponents that look like they're under 100 HP, or if they're above 100 HP but barely, he'll use it to do 12d12 damage automatically, and then just move on from there. Grasp of the Dead he'll alternate to, because it can restrain people on a failed strength saving throw of 23, which is very hard to succeed even for people who are strong. And when people are restrained, you have an advantage on attack rolls against them. And people who are restrained have disadvantage on attack rolls. And they also have disadvantage on dexterity saving throws, though that doesn't really matter because none of his saving throws are dexterity. Doesn't matter. But on restrained people, he'll get advantage on his necrotic bolt, so he'll hit even more. Who knows? He might get a crit, which will double his damage even more than Creeping Death does. So doubling on the doubling. He'll get a bit more bold with his tail attack, as he's also able to fly in and fly out. And he will use his Undead Servant's Lair action very occasionally. When his stock's running low, he'll use it to summon some ghouls to basically, again, be bodies to stop the opponents from trying to get to him. Because, they'll just body block them. Now, next up, we're going to be going over what his strategy will be when he has the wand, as it does change things a lot. The Wand of Orcus gives Orcus a lot more toys to play with, and these toys do change up his strategy a bit. Before I get into what it gives him, though, I'm going to kind of give a little insight into what his strategy turns into. He's going to flee when he gets to a 4th HP, like he would in his lair. Why? Well, he doesn't want to lose his wand. If he dies in the material plane, then that means he disappears when he dies, back to his lair of the abyss, but his wand doesn't. It stays up in the material plane, and he loses it again. And if he gets it, he doesn't want to lose it. And of course, if he's in his lair, he just doesn't want to die in general. Because if he's dead, how's he going to raise all the undead? As for what the wand gives him, his armor class goes up to 20 to boost it from 17 to 20. He destroys any holy water within 10 feet of him as long as he has the wand. And he gets 2 minor beneficial properties and 1 major beneficial property. Now, what does this mean? Well, in the Dungeon Master's Guide, artifacts get randomly generated properties. Or, if you're feeling more generous, the Dungeon Master gives you a certain one that he picks out. And you're definitely going to want to pick out ones for Orcus, because for the minor beneficial properties, the top 3 choices are useless. Because you're already immune to being poisoned, charmed, and frightened, and you don't care about skills. The ones that you're probably going to pick are the resistance to 1 damage type of your choice, which is going to be amazing, especially if he's done research on your players. If he knows that your players use a certain amount of, a certain type of damage more often, he's going to pick resistance to that damage. And then he's going to pick the last option, which gives him a +1 to his armor class. So he goes from 20 to 21. Pretty good there. As for the major beneficial properties, there's a lot to choose from anywhere from boosting one of your ability scores by 2 up to a maximum of 24, having immunity to blindness, deafness, petrification, or stunned, increasing your speed, things of that nature. The major beneficial properties are a lot more flexible to pick through from the minor ones. Not to mention, you can ignore the detrimental properties because you're Orcus. That's why. It's your wand. You're not going to be influenced detrimentally by it. As for how this changes how you fight, firstly, it's replacing your melee attack. You're never going to use your tail if you have the Wand of Orcus, because the Wand of Orcus just does more damage and hits more often. It has a +19 to hit, for God's sake. You're never going to go back to your tail if you have the Wand of Orcus. Especially because it teams up pretty well with Creeping Death, as that gives vulnerability to necrotic damage, and the Wand of Orcus does necrotic damage. Now, it doesn't do as much necrotic damage as Necrotic Bolt, but hey, more damage is more damage. Are you going to use any of the wand spellcasting? Not a lot of it, because truthfully, the spell save DC is a lot weaker than your regular spellcasting DC, at only being a 18 versus a DC 23. You can use Circle of Death just to do a big AoE damage. It's 8d8 in 2024, and so it's pretty good, and you're immune to it, so you can be in it. But truthfully, I would probably be using the charges to do 3 power word kills, because it's power word kill. you can spam it, especially because you can use that. Plus, you get the other power word kills from your layer action. So theoretically, you could do 2 power word kills a round for a couple of the rounds at least. But you'll probably be saving those at least a little bit for when you think that your player's actually below 100 HP. As for the strategy, you're probably going to be doing similar things to what you were doing before, kiting people with Necrotic Bolt, maybe going in with the Wand of Orcus to finish them off, then flying back off. Once you get to a 4th HP, you're going to want to use Time Stop, because with Time Stop, you can use your summoning things, including Call Undead / Conjure Undead. Now, if you want to go by the stat block, you're going to be using the 2014 version of the Wand of Orcus, which uses the Conjure Undead ability. You can summon a combination of undead creatures that have a combined average HP that doesn't exceed 500. So you're going to be summoning a Lich and some weaker minions. Or a Death Knight and some weaker minions. Or a Night Stalker and some weaker minions. Either way, you're going to be summoning something big with a couple of weaker minions. Then you're going to probably use Animate Dead for the amount of actions that you have before you use the Time Stop, and you're going to be flying away. You're not going to want to stick around. You have 40 feet of fly speed, at least. You're flying away. And then lastly, you're probably going to be using something like Finger of Death or Power Word Kill to break the Time Stop as you're running away, just to do a little bit more damage. If you're using the 2024 version, Orcus gets to call 15 of one undead and 15 of another undead. So what's that probably going to be? I'm mean. So I would do 15 Liches and 15 Death Knights. And at that point, your players are going to run. Your players are going to run. If they fight 15 Liches and 15 Death Knights, they're kind of stupid. I'm sorry. Their characters kind of deserve to die. But Orcus would be fleeing after that, probably raising more of an army to fight the players over time. And then your players are going to have to do this big siege on wherever he ends up setting up shop next. Or protecting his lair, as he's going to want to get his lair back after he flees. Not to mention that they're going to be dealing with power word kills wherever they are in his lair, so they're probably not going to want to stay there. At least not too often. But that's why I say that he's practically unkillable when he has his wand. He can summon very powerful undead to very much weaken your opponents. He can use power word kill a hell of a lot. Even outside of the layer, being able to use power word kill 3 times is incredible. Not to mention, he still has access to his legendary actions like his tail or his necrotic bolt, and creeping death is what he's always going to be using before his turn. So one of your players is always going to be vulnerable to necrotic damage. But that's it. That's the strategy for that. And next up, we'll be going over what the players can expect if they get the Wand of Orcus. The Wand of Orcus is pretty unique in the fact that it's a bad guy weapon that the players can fully use. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, for example, in the Vecna stat block, he has the Dagger Afterthought, which lets him do a lot of other things, like being able to do extra necrotic damage and being able to teleport with it and things like that. But when the players pick it up, it's a regular +2 dagger. It doesn't get all the extra cool stuff. The Wand of Orcus, however, does give all the extra cool stuff that Orcus can do. For the most part, there's some downsides to it, but that's because you're not Orcus. Anyways, the wand will always destroy holy water within 10 feet of it. It's just that evil. You don't have to be attuned to it at all. But when you do try to attune to it, you have to succeed a DC 17 Constitution saving throw. On a successful save, the creature takes 10d6 necrotic damage. On a failed save, you die outright and become a zombie if you're a humanoid. Now, save and sucks aren't super relevant in D&D 5th edition. They just don't use them that much. So to see a save or suck on a magic item like this, I think is pretty neat. It kind of calls back to the older editions of D&D that were a lot more deadly than 5th edition is now. As for what it can do, it's a magic weapon that's a +3 to both attack rolls and damage rolls, and it does an extra 2d12 necrotic damage on a hit. So it's not really nerfed from the Orcus version of it, besides being a little bit smaller. They get 2 minor beneficial properties, 1 major beneficial property, 2 minor detrimental properties, and 1 major detrimental property. Now, for the beneficial properties, Orcus would have access to them if he's using the wand, and so if you got it from him, I wouldn't change the beneficial properties. I would have them be the same, just so it's not confusing when the players are like, oh, why aren't I resistant to such and such damage if you gave Orcus resistance to a type of damage. However, for the detrimental properties, I do have a couple of suggestions. For the minor detrimental property, I would not pick the fact that you can destroy all holy water within 10 feet of you. It's redundant because the item can do that anyways. Another redundancy that I wouldn't pick if you pick a certain major detrimental property is the vulnerability to poison damage, because one of the major detrimental properties that you can pick is vulnerability to all damage. You generally don't want to try and have anything that overlaps. You want to make sure that the player has all of the effects, good or bad. You want to make sure that the player feels the consequences and buffs of attuning to this magic item. They get a +3 bonus to their armor class while they're holding the wand, and they also get 7 charges to use spells with. Unlike Orcus, all the spells cost something, as when Orcus uses his wand, the spells cost 2 fewer charges. So to go over the charges, Animate Dead and Speak with Dead are 1 charge, Blight is 2 charges, Circle of Death and Finger of Death are 3 charges, and Power Word Kill is 4 charges. You regain 1d4 plus 3 expended charges daily at dawn, and the DC is always going to be 18. Lastly, with Call Undead, it's a little bit nerfed when it comes to what you can do versus what Orcus can do, but that makes sense. Again, you're not the Prince of Undeath. While holding the wand, you can take a magic action to conjure 15 skeletons and 15 zombies. They last until the next dawn, where they collapse, and you can use this property once per dawn. Now, skeletons and zombies aren't too strong, but having 30 bodies in the way to keep any melee creatures from getting to you is still a pretty good ability to use. And 30 of anything is amazing. Though, I would use swarm tactics instead of just rolling for each one individually, so you don't slow down the fight an insane amount, because having to roll for 15 skeletons and 15 zombies is just going to have the other players rolling their eyes every time you use it. Something else Orcus doesn't have to deal with is the fact that his wand is sentient. It has an intelligence of 16, a wisdom of 12, and a charisma of 16, and it has hearing and dark vision out to 120 feet. It can telepathically communicate with the wearer, and it speaks abyssal and common. And it has the same goals as Orcus, wanting to destroy all life in the multiverse, and it's a cruel and nihilistic weapon, and it doesn't really have that much humor. But something it will do is lie. It'll lie a lot, because it wants to make promises that it won't keep, so you keep using it until you get it to Orcus. Once it gets to Orcus, it will betray you. No question about it. It likes Orcus. Orcus is its master. But it'll make promises, like saying that it'll help you overthrow Orcus. You can get his power. Lastly, destroying the wand. It's not an easy task. It's easier said than done. Destroying the wand makes sure that you have to take it to the positive plane, but not just you. The ancient hero whose skull mounts the mace is the one that has to take it to the positive energy plane. Because if you don't, it'll just go back to its lair in the abyss. But reviving this long-lost hero is not an easy task, considering the fact that Orcus imprisoned his soul somewhere and he keeps it hidden and well guarded. Now, it doesn't say where he imprisoned it. That leaves it up to you, but truthfully, I'd assume he's probably in the same layer of the abyss as Orcus is. He probably likes torturing this soul. Sometimes he'll probably just go over, poke it with a stick, laugh, and then leave. Right. Orcus is a petty bitch. He's not very nice. But your players are going to want to destroy this thing eventually, as it's probably going to screw you over at some point with the lies that it tells you. And the quest to destroy it is a quest in and of itself. It might be the main quest, actually. It's very story-rich. And that's the end of the video. I think Orcus, truthfully, is the strongest of the demon lords, especially with everything he can do. If he has everything in his disposal, he can kick pretty much anybody's ass, especially because he can make essentially an unlimited army. The Demogorgon doesn't have that. Inogu doesn't have that. Grazit doesn't have that. And not to mention the fact that he can make anybody vulnerable to necrotic damage. No saving throw. He just needs to be able to get them within the space to do it. And with how legendary actions work, he'll probably be able to at least hit you while you're vulnerable. But it's up to you to see how tough you want to run him. Personally, I wouldn't hold back, as it kind of gives the players, you don't want to give them an inflated ego, right? You want to make sure that they fight tooth and nail to kill this bastard. But if you liked the video, I'd like you to like, comment, and subscribe, and thank you for watching.